Bhajangati Hanuman ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samsaradava nalalida loka Chanaya karuna guna gunatvam Paptasya kalyana gunaravasya Vande Gururshi Charanaravindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vadicha Madhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakampa Sutaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Vigrahara Dhanani Janana Shingaratan Mandira Majinado Shri Vigrahara Dhanani Janana Shingaratan Mandira Majinado Yuktasya Bhaktam Saniyunjatobi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Yuktasya Bhaktam Saniyunjatobi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Chaturvida Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swadvana Chivdan Haribhakta Sangha Kirtaiva Chiptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Radhika Madhavayurapara Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Namna Pradikshana Swadana Lolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Pradikshana Swadana Shri Charanaravindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Nikunjayuno Rati Kelisirai Jaya Devi Yuktira Bhikshanina Tatarati Daksha Dati Vallabhasya Pande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Pande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shakshadhari Sven Asamasta Sastri Yuktastata Bhavyateva Sadvi Kintu Prabhuya Priya Eva Tasya Pande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Yasha Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasha Prasadana Nagati Katopi Yasha Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasha Prasadana Nagati Katopi Dayan Stutvam Stasya Yashastri Sandam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Dayan Stutvam Stasya Yashastri Sandam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravindam 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 Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedantam Swami Niti Namini Nama Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Bhaskatya Desatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Vaskatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram, Bhaja Pyare tu Sita Ram. Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram, Bhaja Pyare tu Sita Ram. Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram, Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram. Bolo Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. Bolo Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram, Bhaja Pyare tu Sita Ram. Bolo Sita Ram. Haribo, Haribo, Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Haribo, Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo. Bolo Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Nitai Gaura Premanandi Ki Jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajikachar Stitara Satarashi Shishimad, His Divine Grace, they say Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajikachar Stitara Satarashi Shishimad, His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Avantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakti Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Book Distribution Ki Jai. Shri Ram Nomi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavane Ki Jai. Namaste. Namaste Narasimhaya. Hiranyaka Bhuvata Jaya Shiva
Kara Kamalavare Nakha Adutta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Hare Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jagadisha Hare Jagadisha Hare Jaya Narsimha Dev 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 Nisingare Nisingare Jaya Nisingare Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jai Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priya Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindadevi Ki Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Bilasi Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Bilasi Tomara Sharanala Tarvancha Purna Kripa Kari Karatare Vrindavana Vasi Tumi kripa kari karatare Vrindavana Vasi Namo Namo Moraya Vela Velas Kunje Diyava Nayane Bosada Jogala Ruparasi Amen Nayane Heribosada Jogala Ruparasi Nivedana Dara Sakiraya no gata karo ene sevayadi karo diye karo nijadase Ina Krishna dase koi enamorao Si Radha Govinda preme sada enavasi Si Radha Govinda preme sada enavasi Yani kanisa papane brahmatya de kanisa tani tani pranasanti pradakshina pade pade Yani kanisa papane brahmatya de kanisa tani tani pranasanti pradakshina pade pade Yani kanisa papane brahmatari kanisa tani tani pranasanti pradakshina pade pade Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namah Vrindai tulasi devai priyai kesava satya Vishnu bhakti prade devi satavatai namo namaha Vrindai tulasi devai priyai kesava satya Vishnu bhakti prade devi satavatai namo namaha Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service which you should have had. Whoever takes shelter of the earth wishes to fulfill,
bestowing your mercy upon him and making him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavana Dham. Thus within my vision I'll always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen lowly servant of Krishna praise may always swim in love Shri Radha and Govinda Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Namo. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Cheto Darpanam Arjanam Bhava Mahadevagni Nirvapanam Shirakai Ravya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipradam Purnam Mitasvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Saktis Tatra Pitani Amitaks Smaranina Kala Etadrisita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam Drisi Samihajani Anuraga Trinada Pisuni Chena Tarurapi Vaishnuna Manina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishware Bhavatad Bhakti Rahaitu Ki Tvai Ai Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam
Nayanam Galora Shudharaya Vadanam Gadagada Vidaya Gira Ulakai Chitam Vapu Kada Tavanama Kahani Vavisati Gaitam Nishena Chakusakam Saitam Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Veda Hatam Karotuva Jatata Thava Vidadhatulam Poto Matranatastu Saivana Paraha Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Ki Jai. Glory to Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fiery condition of life or repeated birth and death.
The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon.
It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious.
Oh my Lord,
your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings.
And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda.
In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord,
out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them.
Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind,
thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotion, service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at the lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting holy names of the Lord that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of the demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent names of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme Vedic literature or literatures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna is one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruit of activities of karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fellows person about the glories of the holy name. 10. To not have complete faith in the chanting of holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prem. Now, let us offer our humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindubhyavicha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanami Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarane Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaurupani Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So I want to wish everyone happy Ram Nomi, or
Jai.
Lord Ramachandra's appearance day.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram. And then we're going to read something from the 9th canto, 10th chapter, in the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. Thereafter, when Ravana, the king of the Rakshasas, observed that his soldiers had been lost, he was extremely angry. Thus, he mounted his airplane, which was decorated with flowers, and proceeded toward Lord Ramachandra, who sat on the effulgent chariot brought by Matali, the chariot driver of Indra. Then Ravana struck Lord Ramachandra with his sharp arrows. Lord Ramachandra said to Ravana, "You are the most abominable of the man-eaters. Indeed, you are like their stool. You resemble a dog For as a dog steals eatables from the kitchen in the absence of the householder, in my absence you kidnapped my wife, Sita Devi. Therefore, as Yamaraja punishes sinful men, I shall also punish you. You are most abominable, sinful, and shameless. Today, therefore, I, whose attempt never fails, shall punish you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Nachadaivat parambalam. No one can surpass the strength of the transcendence. Ravana was so sinful and shameless that he did not know what the result would be of kidnapping Mother Sita, the pleasure potency of Ramachandra. This is the disqualification of the Rakshasas. Asatyam apratistam te jagad ahur anishwaram. The Rakshasas are unaware that the Supreme Lord is the ruler of the creation. They think that everything has come about by chance or accident, and that there is no ruler, king, or controller. Therefore, the Rakshasas act independently as they like, going insofar as to kidnap the goddess of fortune. This policy of Ravana's is extremely dangerous for the materialist. Indeed, it brings ruin to the materialistic civilization. Nonetheless, because atheists are Rakshasas, they dare to do things that are most abominable, and thus they are punished without fail. Religion consists of the orders of the Supreme Lord, and one who carries out these orders is religious. One who fails to carry out the Lord's orders is irreligious, and he is to be punished. So this is very interesting purport, because we see the same thing today. Previously there was this great Rakshasa demon, Ravana, but today there's thousands and thousands of Ravanas. And because of their influence, society all over the world is suffering. And we can see that. In India today, India, the land of Lord Ramachandra and Lord Krishna, where they appeared, where their lotus feet touched the ground. Actually, they never really touched the ground, but they were there. And today, there's terrible suffering in India and all over the world because of a virus. And people must be wondering, well, how did this happen? Why is it happening to us? And so many people are dying. Well, the explanation is here. These Rakshasas are unaware that the Supreme Lord is the ruler of creation. They think that everything has come about by chance or accident, and that there is no ruler, king, or controller. Therefore, the Rakshasas act independently as they like, going even so far as to kidnap the goddess of fortune. This policy of Ravana's is extremely dangerous for the materialist. Indeed, it brings ruin to the materialistic civilization. That's exactly what's happening today. And it's all because India, of all places, is declared a secular government in which they don't deny people, theoretically, they don't deny people the right to practice their religion, but they don't give any favoritism to any religion. This, of course, is foolish, especially in India, where the traditional culture has been Krishna consciousness. So what happens? People suffer. Nonetheless, because atheists are Rakshasas, they dare to do things that are most abominable, and thus they are punished without fail. Well, most abominable, killing cows. And I have good news. Yesterday we had a new cow that was born, and her name is Janaki. So we're very fortunate, very auspicious. And 1 year ago, Rajeswari was born. So these are two very special cows, somehow or other related to Lord Ramachandra. Okay, so religion consists of the orders of the Supreme Lord, and one who carries out these orders is religious. One who fails to carry out the Lord's orders is irreligious, and he is to be punished. So if we follow Krishna consciousness strictly, we'll be protected by the Lord. That should be our understanding, especially today when we're celebrating the appearance day of Lord Ramachandra. If we follow Krishna consciousness strictly, we will be protected. And if we act independently, we will have to suffer. After thus rebuking Ravana, Lord Ramachandra fixed an arrow to his bow, aimed at Ravana, and released the arrow, which pierced Ravana's heart like a thunderbolt. Upon seeing this, Ravana's followers raised a tumultuous sound, crying, "Alas, alas, what has happened? What has happened?" As Ravana, vomiting blood from his 10 mouths, fell from his airplane, just as a pious man falls to earth from the heavenly planets when the results of his pious activities are exhausted. Prabhupada writes in his purport, in Bhagavad Gita 9.21, it is said, Shine punye martyalokam vishanti. When the results of their pious activities are exhausted, those who have enjoyed in the heavenly planets fall again to earth. The fruitive activities of this material world are such that whether one acts piously or impiously, one must remain within the material world according to different conditions. For neither pious nor impious actions can relieve one from Maya's clutches of repeated birth and death. So how many times have I heard from people, well, I don't believe in organized religion. My religion is do good to others. I don't bother anyone, and I mind my own business, and I can read my Bible or my Bhagavad Gita in private, and that's my religion. Well, that's nonsense. But of course, people speculate and they imagine things in their mind. But here, Prabhupada is explaining, and not Prabhupada only, but Krishna explains, that pious or impious activities both have karmic reactions that keep people in the material world. You have to get your pious reactions, your punya, you have to take birth again. And to get your impious reactions or pap, you have to take birth again. So both ways, whether you're pious or impious, you're still not free from the cycle of birth and death. This is something most people don't understand. That's why they say, oh, my religion is I don't bother anybody, and I try and do some good deeds. If I see a homeless person on the street and he has a little sign, please help, God bless, I always give $5. Well, that $5 is going to condemn you to take birth again. So instead of giving to Krishna, they give to the wino or the homeless person or the indigent person on the street, and they get, if that person uses that money for some sinful activity, they get 1/6 of the reaction also. So people are completely unaware of the laws of material nature. They live in ignorance, and they act independently, and they speculate, and they make up things, and they follow those made-up things, those false things, and they ruin their life, and they ruin the lives of their dependents also. Somehow or other, Ravana was raised to an exalted position as the king of a great kingdom with all material opulences. But because of his sinful act of kidnapping Mother Sita, all the results of his pious activities were destroyed. If one offends an exalted personality, especially the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one certainly becomes most abominable, bereft of the results of pious activities. One must fall down like Ravana and other demons. So we should take this to heart and not follow the example of the demons, eating meat, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, all these nonsense activities. It just brings disaster to our lives and the lives of our dependents. It is therefore advised that one transcend both pious and impious activities and remain in the pure state of freedom from all designations. Sarvapadi vinir muktam tatparatvena nirmanam. Hrishikena sevanam bhaktir uttama. We should always strive for uttama bhakti, pure devotional service, not just pious activities. Pious activities are good, but as long as there's attachment to the result, one remains in the material world, so it's actually bad. But pious activities rendered only for the pleasure of Krishna with no personal motive other than to please the Lord, that is transcendental life. So we should strive for transcendental life always. When one is fixed in devotional service, he is above the material platform. On the material platform, there are higher and lower positions. But when one is above the material platform, he's always fixed in a spiritual position. Sagunam samatitya Brahma Bhuyaya kalpate. That's Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, 26th verse. Ravana, or those like him, may be very powerful and opulent in this material world, but theirs is not a secure position, because, after all, they are bound by the results of their karma. Karmana daivanetrena. We should not forget that we are completely dependent on the laws of nature. Prakrite kriyamana nigunai karmani sarvasaha ankara vimudatva kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. Bhagavad Gita 3.27. One should not be proud of one's exalted position and act like Ravana, thinking oneself independent of material nature's laws. So the laws of material nature are what are described as implacable, which means you cannot change them, you cannot alter them. So if people commit sins, whether willingly or unwillingly, they suffer. And if they don't try and find out why their suffering gets worse and more complicated and more entangling. So when we suffer, we should take that as a message from Krishna. He's sending us a direct message. You are doing something wrong, and you think it's right. Therefore, you need to get the knowledge by which you can correct the wrong by acting genuinely in righteousness. So, unless we use suffering as a stepping stone to Krishna consciousness, it becomes a curse on us, and we suffer one problem after another. Thereafter, all the women whose husbands had fallen in the battle, headed by Mandodari, the wife of Ravana, came out of Lanka. Continuously crying, they approached the dead bodies of Ravana and the other Rakshasas. Striking their breasts in affliction because their husbands had been killed by the arrows of Lakshmana, the women embraced their respective husbands and cried piteously in voices appealing to everyone, "O my lord, O master, you epitomized trouble for others, and therefore you were called Ravana. But now that you have been defeated, we also are defeated, for without you, the state of Lanka has been conquered by the enemy. To whom it will go for shelter?" Well, when they call Rama the enemy, that's of course their misunderstanding. Ravana's wife Mandodari and the other wives knew very well how cruel a person Ravana was. This very word Ravana means one who causes crying for others. Ravana continuously caused trouble for others, but when his sinful activities culminated in giving trouble to Sita Devi, he was killed by Lord Ramachandra. O greatly fortunate one, you came under the influence of lusty desires. So the ladies are speaking to their husbands, and this is probably Mandodari speaking to Ravana. O greatly fortunate one, you came under the influence of lusty desires, and therefore you could not understand the influence of Mother Sita. Now, because of her curse, you have been reduced to this state, having been killed by Lord Ramachandra. So we shouldn't think that this is particular to the Ramayana that happened 1.7 million years ago. It doesn't apply to us. It does, because Sita Devi is actually Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is the wife of Narayana, and Lakshmi is the bestower of blessings. And when a person is blessed because of their pious activities in previous lives, what is the form of the blessing? Well, one gets a nice body in a nice family, and one is also blessed with wealth and prominence and power and good education and good family and good kids. All these are blessings. Now, if they misuse those blessings and act independently, what happens? They're punished severely. And that's what we're seeing today, whether it's Trump or Biden or this one or that one. Because of their sinful activities, they're going to be severely punished. They will get the results of their pious activities from previous lives, but then all that success will turn into failure. We see the example of Hitler and Stalin and Mao Zedong and the Mussolini, and also the dictator of Spain during World War II. All these people have been defeated, although they had tremendous opulence and power. Now Prabhupada writes, not only was Mother Sita powerful, but any woman who follows in the footsteps of Mother Sita can also become similarly powerful. There are many instances of this in the history of Vedic literature. Whenever we find a description of ideal, chaste women, Mother Sita is among them. Mandodari, the wife of Ravana, was also very chaste. Similarly, Draupadi was one of the 5 exalted chaste women. As a man must follow great personalities like Brahma and Narada, a woman must follow the path of such ideal women as Sita, Mandodari, and Draupadi. By staying chaste and faithful to her husband, a woman enriches herself with supernatural power. It is a moral principle that one should not be influenced by lusty desires for another's wife. Matravat paradaresu. An intelligent person must look upon another's wife as being like his mother. This is a moral injunction from Chanakya Sloka, number 10. Matravat paradaresu, paradravyesu lostravat, atmavat sarvabhutesu yapasyati sapanditaha. One who considers another's wife as his mother, another's possessions as a lump of dirt, and treats all other living beings as he would himself, is considered to be learned. Thus Ravana was condemned not only by Lord Ramachandra, but even by his own wife Mandodari. Because she was a chaste woman, she knew the power of another chaste woman, especially such a wife as Mother Sita Devi. So, this is like the worst thing a person can do. That is, what was Ravana's desire? He was lusty when he heard from his sister Surpanaka and from others how beautiful the wife of Lord Ramachandra was. He desired to defile her, as he had done thousands of times. He had thousands of wives, and they were mostly all kidnapped, princesses and prominent women, and he kept them in a harem, and he gave them intoxication, and then he had illicit activities with them. This was the culture of the Ravanas of the world, and it's going on today also. Like I said, there was one Ravana before, now there are thousands, millions of Ravanas. And that's why there's so much suffering in the world. But on the other hand, women can protect themselves by the mercy of the Lord by being chaste wives, just like Sita Devi and Mandodari and Sitala and Arundhati and Anasuya and Draupadi, and the list is very, very long, of exalted, chaste women who developed mystical powers, not by sleeping on a bed of nails or eating just one type of food for their whole life. No, they attained this mystical power by being chaste wives. So this is an important point. And it says, just as a man must follow great personalities like Brahma and Narada, a woman must follow the path of such ideal women as Sita, Mandodari, and Draupadi. By staying chaste and faithful to her husband, a woman enriches herself with supernatural power. Now, let's look at Mandodari. She was Ravana's principal wife, but he had many other wives. She was one out of 1,000 wives that Ravana had, but yet she remained chaste and she remained faithful to her husband. So this is an interesting point, because sometimes you see, it happens all the time, a wife is chaste and loyal to her husband, but the husband is cheating on her. So what should the wife do? Immediately file for divorce and separate herself from that husband? Well, actually, she should still remain chaste and loyal to her husband, even though he's a rascal, and pray for him. But her protection is remaining chaste, and because of that, she will gradually develop mystical powers that whatever she wishes will happen. Just like Sita Devi warned Ravana, you give me back my husband, otherwise he's going to come here and destroy you and all your Rakshasa dynasty. And he didn't believe her. He didn't know what her power was. He didn't know what the power of a chaste woman is. So this is a secret for all women, and it's obviously hard to follow. But if you, just like Krishna consciousness, may be hard to follow also. But if you do it, then one is rewarded with the ability to control the mind and the senses and keep them always focused on Krishna. Now, for a man, one who considers another's wife, for men should always see other women as their mother, except his wife. Another's possessions as lump of dirt, and treats all other living beings as he would himself. That's the golden rule that was spoken and practiced way before the Christian principle of the golden rule that's in the Bible. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So, and then thus Ravana was condemned not only by Lord Ramachandra, but even by his own wife, Mandodari. Wow. Thus Ravana was condemned not only by Lord Ramachandra, but even by his own wife, Mandodari, because she was a chaste woman. She knew the power of another chaste woman, especially such a wife as Mother Sita. She warned her husband, but he wouldn't listen. So that's what happens to men who don't listen. They get ruined. So we have a message here for women and for men, and it's very, very important. O pleasure of the Rakshasa dynasty, because of you, the state of Lanka, and also we ourselves now have no protector. By your deeds, you have made your body fit to be eaten by vultures, and your soul fit to go to hell. So Mandodari is talking the truth to her husband, who's dead, but only his body is dead. He's still, as a soul, he's still alive. And she's talking to him. So you see, I've seen this myself. One time when I visited some family members in France, they were very distant relatives, but anyway, there was some connection. And I stayed with them in a small town in the French Alps. They live in a small town, and they introduced me to a lady who was married to a cousin of my mother, and that cousin of that man had died. So when I was introduced to her, she said, "Come with me." I said, "Oh, okay." So I walk with her, and she walks over to a cemetery, and she walks to a specific grave, which had a picture on it, and that was her dead husband. And she starts talking to her husband, and she says, introducing me to the husband. And I thought that was really strange. But then, you know, when you hear this now, it's not strange. You know, the wife is talking to her dead husband, and she acted as if he was answering her also. That was a little creepy. But she was into it. I mean, like, she was there. That was her husband. She was talking to him, you know, and introducing me. And so I just went along with it. And then finally she stopped, and then we went back. So here Mandodari is talking to her husband, and she's being very blunt. And Prabhupada writes, "One who follows the path of Ravana is condemned in two ways. His body is fit to be eaten by dogs and vultures, and the soul goes to hell. As stated by Lord," well, when it talks about dogs and vultures, when one goes to hell, they're welcomed there by the ruhus. The ruhus are flesh-eating dogs, and they're bitten. Imagine that. What a welcoming party they have in hell. We have a welcoming party here now. They have one in hell also. As stated by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 16:19, Tanaham Drisata Kuran Samasresu Naradamam Shripam Yajasram Asuban Asurisveva Yonisu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Thus, the destination of godless atheists such as Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and Dantavakra is a hellish condition of life. Mandodari, the wife of Ravana, could understand all this because she was a chaste woman. Although lamenting for the death of her husband, she knew what would happen to his body and soul. For although one cannot see directly with one's material eyes, one can see with eyes of knowledge. Pasyanti jnana chaksusaha. In Vedic history, there are many instances of how one becomes godless and is condemned by the laws of nature. Well, crime doesn't pay. It's a saying in English. In other words, if a person commits crime, they're going to get prosecuted and condemned and suffer. And the same way, if one commits sinful activities, whether knowingly or unknowingly, they're going to suffer. Suffering is a message from Krishna that we have done something wrong. And we should accept it like that and try and find out what it is that we did wrong. And if we can't figure it out, we should ask Guru, either Siksha or Diksha Guru, to enlighten us. What did I do wrong that I'm suffering like this? And they'll question you. And finally, by your answers, they'll know what you did wrong, even though you may not know it yourself. Okay. Then, Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Vibhishan, the pious brother of Ravana and devotee of Lord Ramachandra, received approval from Lord Ramachandra, the king of Koshala. Then he performed the prescribed funeral ceremonies for his family members to save them from the path to hell. So we see Vibhishan is the brother of Ravana. He's born a Rakshasa, but he reformed himself by surrendering to Lord Rama. And now, so his brother, his own brother, right, is acting impiously and independently and has brought complete destruction on his whole family and dynasty, the Rakshasa dynasty. All the Rakshasas were killed by Lord Ramachandra in the battle of Lanka. But here, the brother of Ravana, who left his brothers, Kumbhakarna and Ravana and so forth, and came and surrendered to Lord Ramachandra, and is completely surrendered to the will of the Lord. He's a devotee. Even though he looks like a Rakshasa, and even though he's born in a Rakshasa family. So this is the mercy of Lord Ramachandra. He can take a person who's born a Rakshasa and is a Rakshasa and turn him into a pure devotee. And there's one example of it. It is Vibhishan. And there are other examples. There's Jatayu. He was a vulture. He's not even a human being. He was a pure devotee. And there's Hanuman, half monkey, half human. He's a pure devotee. And Sugriva, although Sugriva continued to act a little bit nonsensically, but finally came to his senses because Lakshman was going to kill him for wasting time, wasting Lord Ramachandra's time. And finally, Sugriva woke up and followed the order of the Lord. So that is a devotee. A devotee listens to the instructions of the Lord, coming either through his guru or directly from Krishna by hearing Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so then Sri Sukadeva Goswami says, Vibhishan, the pious brother of Ravana and devotee of Lord Ramachandra, received approval from Lord Ramachandra, king of Koshala. Then he performed the prescribed funeral ceremonies for his family members to save them from the path to hell. So that's the Shraddha ceremony. It can save your family member from going to hell and taking birth as an animal. That's why the Shraddha ceremony should be performed, even by devotees. So when a family member dies, one should offer Mahaprasadam to the deceased, and with prayers, with the help of a bona fide Vaishnava priest, and also chant Hare Krishna and become a pure devotee themselves if you want to save your family members and many other people from going to hell. After giving up the body, one is transferred to another body. But sometimes, if one is too sinful, he is checked from transmigrating to another body, and thus he becomes a ghost. To save a diseased person from ghostly life, the funeral ceremony or Shraddha ceremony, as prescribed in authorized Shastra, must be performed. Ravana was killed by Lord Ramachandra and was destined for hellish life. But by Lord Ramachandra's advice, Vibhishana, Ravana's brother, performed all the duties prescribed in religion to the dead. Thus, Lord Ramachandra was kind to Ravana even after Ravana's death. You see? So nobody dies. Only the material body disappears or dies. But the soul is eternal. It cannot die. So, therefore, we can communicate even with the dead, and that's through the Shraddha ceremony. So we should never feel like, oh, I'll never see this person again, or this person is dead, they're finished, they're in the cemetery, I'll never see them again. That's a false understanding. And one has a duty to the deceased even after they're deceased. And that duty is to become a pure devotee of the Lord. And at least once or maybe every year perform the Shraddha ceremony for that relative. And we are doing it every day by offering food to Krishna and then offering it to the public. Same. Thereafter, Lord Ramachandra found Sita Devi sitting in a small cottage beneath the tree named Simsapa in a forest of Ashoka trees. She was lean and thin, being aggrieved because of separation from him. Seeing his wife in that condition, Lord Ramachandra was very compassionate. When Ramachandra came before her, she was exceedingly happy to see her husband, and her lotus-like mouth showed her joy. After giving Vibhishan power to rule the Rakshasa population of Lanka for the duration of one kalpa, so although most of the men Rakshasas were killed, the wives and the children were still there. So, therefore, Vibhishan was made king by Lord Ramachandra, and to rule the land of the Rakshasas, Sri Lanka. It's probably true today also. But the saving grace is Vibhishan, who received Lord Ramachandra's mercy. After giving Vibhishan the power to rule the Rakshasa population of Lanka for the duration of one kalpa, Lord Ramachandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, placed Sita Devi on an airplane decorated with flowers and then got on the plane himself. The period for his living in the forest having ended, the Lord returned to Ayodhya accompanied by Hanuman, Sugriva, and his brother Lakshmana. So we see Ravana had an airplane decorated with flowers, and Rama has an airplane decorated with flowers. Have you ever seen an airplane decorated with flowers? No. So you see, these are special people, and they have tremendous powers. When Lord Ramachandra returned to his capital, Ayodhya, he was greeted on the road by the princely order, who showered his body with beautiful, fragrant flowers, while great personalities like Lord Brahma and other demigods glorified the activities of the Lord in great jubilation. Upon reaching Ayodhya, Lord Ramachandra heard that in his absence, his brother Bharata was eating barley cooked in the urine of a cow, covering his body with the bark of trees, wearing matted locks of hair, and lying on a mattress of kusha. The most merciful Lord very much lamented this. So imagine that he's cooking grains with barley and eating it every day. I'm sorry. He's cooking grains with cow urine, not milk, and eating it every day. So today we cook oatmeal with milk, right, and some sweetener, and it's very delicious. But how would you feel cooking oatmeal with urine of a cow? Well, cow's urine isn't that bad. It's a little salty, that's all. And if it's fresh, it doesn't taste that bad. I taste it all the time, right from the cows when they're passing urine. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's pure. And like I said, it has a slightly tasty taste to it. You know? But anyway, this was Bharata's tapasya. Even though he was made king of Ayodhya, which was the capital of the whole world at that time, still he refused to have any opulence or to even consider himself king. So he was serving the chappals, or the wooden shoes or sandals of Lord Ramachandra, which he put on the throne, and always remained a humble servant of the Lord in that way. When Lord Bharat understood that Lord Ramachandra was returning to the capital Ayodhya, he immediately took upon his own head Lord Ramachandra's wooden shoes and came out from his camp at Nandigrama. So he didn't even sleep in the palace in Ayodhya. He slept in this camp in Nandigrama, and he basically had dreadlocks and ate barley cooked in urine, cow urine, and slept on the floor. He lived like Lord Ramachandra was living in the forest, and he refused to partake of any opulence or any position. But he did manage the kingdom, waiting for his brother to come back, and it's like 14 years. So he was a very loyal person, one of the greatest personalities in all Vedic history. So Lord Bharata was accompanied by ministers, priests, and other respectable citizens, by professional musicians vibrating pleasing musical sounds, and by learned brahmanas loudly chanting the Vedic hymns. Following in the procession were chariots drawn by beautiful horses with harnesses of golden rope. These chariots were decorated by flags with golden embroidery and by other flags of various sizes and patterns. There were soldiers bedecked with golden armor, servants bearing betel nut, and many well-known and beautiful prostitutes. Many servants followed on foot, bearing an umbrella, whisks, different grades of precious jewels, and other paraphernalia befitting a royal reception. Accompanied in this way, Lord Bharata, his heart softened in ecstasy and his eyes full of tears, approached Lord Brahmachandra and fell at his feet with great ecstatic love. Well, here we have a real description of the purity of Bharata's heart and his love for his brother and his loyalty and dutifulness. This is what we should aspire for, to be like Bharata. It's one of the greatest personalities in Vedic history. Okay, we'll stop right there. Continue a little bit more later on. Are there any questions? Okay, Lord Ramachandra Bhagavan Ki Jai, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So this is Canto 9, Chapter 10, the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. So there are different Ramayanas. The original one is Valmiki Ramayana, and that's bona fide. Another one is the Ramayana in the Bhagavatam that we just read from. This is also bona fide. And there's also a Ramayana in the, I think, the Padma Purana. That's also bona fide. Then there are a whole bunch of other Ramayanas, like the Ramcharitmanas. They're all, let's say, based on the Valmiki Ramayana, but they may deviate in one way or another. So the Ramcharitmanas is very poetic and has a lot, it's basically the internalized realization of Tulsidas, of Lord Rama, but it has some mistakes in it. Prabhupada pointed them out, and therefore it's not Amala Purana, whereas Valmiki Ramayana's Amala Purana is pure, and Srimad Bhagavatam Ramayana is pure, and Padma Purana Ramayana is pure. All the others have some little deviations, but they're read, like they have Ramayana in Tamilian language, and they have Ramayana in Andhra Pradeshi language, and they have written by different authors. And you have North India, the Tulsi Ramcharitmanas, and in the vernacular of North India. So we see there are many different Ramayanas, but the authorized one is Valmiki Ramayana. Hari Bol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Notice they say that in the presence of the Lord,
Yeah.
even when let's say Ravana dies, even the person who dies in the presence of the Lord, he is liberated. That's
Yes.
true. But here when the reference about the soul going to hell.
Well, yes. That's Mandodari in her emotion. It doesn't mean that's what happened. Right? But Ravana was experiencing hell. The arrow of Lord Ramachandra that burned his heart. Right? So, anyway, we know the history of Ravana, and this giant Vijay, they took 3 births as demons, right? And so first was Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and then it was Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and then there was Sisuvala and Dantavakra in Krishna pastime. So, and then, because they did such a good act as demons, they were awarded Jagai and Madai in Lord Chaitanya's pastime. And then it went back to Godhead. So, But that's Mandodari's, emotional outburst. Haribol. All glories to Prabhupada. You know how women get angry sometimes. They say all kinds of things, But this same nonsense is happening today. Men are acting like Ravana. Sometimes they have chaste wives.